video is going to cover creating a Firebase on Rails application. So it's going to be a Ruby on Rails front end with a Firebase backend. Now there's no active record support for this as far as I'm aware, so we're just going to be creating this manually. On that note, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do this unless you have a specific Firebase use case, because you don't really want to just use Rails for its front-end capabilities. You might as well just use React at that point and just have a Firebase backend from there. That said, if you have a use case, it's really annoying to just have people tell you that you shouldn't do stuff all the time. So today we're just going to take a look at how to do this. First thing we're going to do is come over to the Firebase website and we're going to create a new project. I'm going to call this Firebase on Rails, and I'm going to hit continue. After we do that, it's going to prompt us for Google Analytics. I'm not going to do this because I don't need it for this tutorial. Now we have our app and we can get started. The first thing that we'll do is we'll set up the authentication. Now we're going to go through this in two different ways. We're going to do a HTTP version where we just do a hard connect to the API through a HTTP request. And then we're also going to do it through a gem, and it's not going to be the basic Firebase gem because there's actually a Google Cloud gem that you can use for this. Let's start with the authentication. You'll see right here it says get started. I'm actually going to full screen this and zoom in a bit. I usually like to keep it at around 150. So you can set up additional providers, or you can just use native providers. In this case, you could just use email and password. That's going to be the one that I'm going to use. So we can click this. Going to say email and password enable. We'll click save. At this point, we now have our email and password set up. So what we need to do is come over here to the little cogwheel project settings, and you're going to have a web API key. Now don't bother trying to steal this. I'm going to delete the project as soon as this video is over, but we're just going to go ahead and grab this. So we'll right click copy, and then we'll come back to our application. I'm going to CD out of here and CD into my tutorials folder. And then I'm going to just say Rails new Firebase and create my project. I'm going to CD into the Firebase project. I'll bump up the size a bit so you can see what I'm doing. I'll open this up in VS Code. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type editor equals code space dash dash wait inside of quotes. And then I'm going to say Rails credentials edit. You can see the command right here, which is going to open up our credentials file inside of our VS Code terminal right here. So you'll see this opens and then we're good to go. So what we're going to do here is, I think I just called this Firebase underscore API underscore key. And then I'm going to paste in my Firebase key. I'll save that, I'll close it, and then you'll see that this says file encrypted and saved because we passed the wait flag. So now we have the API key that we can use for this. We can now go ahead and generate some pages. So for this, I think I generated a few different pages. So we'll just create a Rails G controller, full screen this, call the controller pages. And it looks like I created a index page, a sign up page, a home page, a login page. And it looks like I also had a logout action. So we'll just skip that for now. So we're just going to throw everything into one singular controller. If you want to clean this up later, you're free to do so. It's going to be easy to break apart. It's just for the sake of this tutorial, it's easier to just throw it all in one thing. So I'm going to move my code over so I can actually see this. So now what we want to do is come over to our controller. So say app controllers and our pages controller. We'll open this, and then we want to come into config and our routes.rb file, and we want to open this. So the first thing we want to do here is we want to set our routes to have a root. So we'll just say the root is going to be the pages controller index action. Now some of this is going to be based off of another tutorial that I saw. So I will link to that in the video description if you want a bit more info on how the user sessions are laid out here. I'm just going to kind of be going through this a little bit faster. So this is going to be the pages index action. We're then going to have the sign up. We're going to get rid of the pages for all of these actually. And we're just going to set these to be to the pages sign up, to the pages home. And this is going to be a post request actually. So our get is fine, but our login needs to be a post request. So we'll just move this down, change this to a post, finish the quotes, and this will go to the pages login. We then need a post to the logout, which is going to go to pages logout. We then need a post for the sign up, which will go to /sign up. So this will be pages sign up action. And then we need eventually we'll create one. For now, we'll just comment it out. It'll be the post for the create /create_to-do, which will go to the pages create to-do action. So we'll create this one later and we'll just deal with these for now. So let's go ahead and let's come over to our pages controller. So inside of our pages controller, we're going to have to require a few things to get started. It's going to be require net/http. We're going to require URI, and we're going to require JSON. So save that, and then let's start our server just to make sure that everything is working okay. So let me come over here and refresh. Looks like it is. So what we want to do is start by creating our sign up action. So if we, instead of coming to home, let's go to sign up, and we'll create a form in here and do some other stuff. So let me bump this up to 150 just so you can see it. I'll bump this up one more. So to start, what we need is we need to create a URI, which is going to be equal to URI. We need to pass something into the arguments here. Now this is going to be linked in the video description. I'll have a gist with this little snippet of code here. But the basic idea is we need to grab the URL that we're going to for this endpoint, which is going to be https identitytoolkit.googleapis.com/v1/accounts:sign up ? And then your key parameter. Your key is going to be equal to, we're just going to throw some templates in here, and we're just going to say your key is equal to the rails.application.credentials.firebase_API_key. So that'll give you your encrypted credentials key, and it'll attach it in here so that Firebase knows how to charge you for this. Next, we can check for a response. So we'll say response is equal to net:/http.post_form, which takes a URI. It'll take an email in quotes, which is going to be @email. It's going to take a password in quotes, which is going to be @password. Next, we're going to do a data equals JSON.parse for the response.body. We're then going to do a session for the user ID is equal to data local ID. So you're going to get back a data object. It's going to have a couple things on it, including the user's email and the user ID. You can store this inside of a session, or alternatively, you can just say store the entire data in the session, which is what I ended up doing right here. So this just lets me call like data local ID or something down the line, as opposed to having to store each one individually. So we'll just put this back. And then finally, we can say redirect to the home path with a notice that says signed up successfully. And then we'll do if response.is_a ? net:/http success. Now we can actually come into our views, pages, home. And in our home page, we can do our sign-in form. So I want this to be bootstrapped. So we're going to have to add in Bootstrap real fast, just so it looks a little bit better. So let's come over to Google, search for Bootstrap 5. This is a bit of an aside. Just click on the first link, grab the CSS link, come into your layouts, application.html.erb. We'll paste this into our header. And we'll also grab the JS and we'll paste that in as well. That just fixes stuff like the drop downs. Now we can come back over to our homepage and refresh, and you'll see that some stuff has changed here. Actually, yeah, so let's come over to, I had this confused. Let's go to our pages sign up page. That would make a lot more sense. And in here, we want to start by creating a container, and we're going to give this a margin top -5. Then we're going to do a row. Then we're going to do a .col-8 .offset-2. And if you're wondering how I'm doing this, if you go into File, Preferences, Settings, and let me full screen this, and then you search for EMMET, I think. You want your emit tab completion or something. So your emit trigger expansion on tab. That'll just allow you to do your tab completion if you have the right syntax. For IDs, it's going to be a hash. For classes, it's going to be a dot. But okay, now we need a H2. We'll say this is going to be the sign up page. And then we want a form. So we're going to say form with a URL to the sign up path. Local is going to be true. Method is going to be post. Do F. We'll do our end tag. And then in here, we can do a .mb-3. And then we can do a f.label for the email. Class is going to be form-control. And then do a f.text_field for the email. Type is going to be email. Autofocus is going to be true. Class is going to be form-control. That should do it. I guess we can also do this. So let's also do a div with an ID equal to email help. Class equals form-text. And then let's lie to our user and say, we'll never share your email with anyone else. You know, they don't have to know that we're sending it to Google because we don't know what we're doing. Next, we can do a MB-3 again. This is going to be for our password. So for this, we can say this is going to be a f.label for the password, class of form-label. Then do a f.text_field for the password, type of password, class of form-control. And then outside of this div, we can do a f.submit sign up, class of btn-primary. And of course, if you want to validate that the password that they're entering is correct, you could do like a password confirmation field, and then in the controller, just check if it's valid. If it's not valid, redirect. But again, we're sort of hacking this together just to make things work so you can get up and started and do whatever you need to with Firebase. Next, we'll do a link to, we'll say existing user, log in. This is going to take us to the root path because that's going to be where our login page is. So this right here should be our sign up form. If we come over here and refresh, hopefully things work. We do have a label here. It looks like the formatting is a bit weird for our f.label for the email. So let's just go ahead and get rid of that. Or we could even do I guess it's form-label, right? That gives us our, yeah, there we go. So here you see our email. We'll never share your email with anyone, and then our password. Existing user just takes us to our root path. So let's go ahead and let's test this. I'm going to create a user, call it dean@example.com with a password of password. Hit sign up. It says okay, but we're not redirected anywhere after that. So what happened? I guess we can come over to our Firebase on Rails app. I'll full screen this. We can come over to our authentication. We don't currently have any users for this project. All right, I see what I've done wrong. I set these to be @email and @password, and I wasn't actually doing that. So let's come down to the bottom. We'll create a private, and then we'll do a def for the set_user_data. And then in here, we're going to do @email equals params email, @password equals params password. Then we'll grab this, and then at the top here, we'll do a before _action set user data, and that's going to be only for sign up and log in. We'll change this to %i, and we'll get rid of the colons. So we'll save that. Come back over to our sign up page, dean@example.com with a password of password. Sign up. It does a post, redirects us. Let's come over to our Firebase console. And now we can see that we have a user account that's been created on our Firebase app. So we're now technically connected through this HTTP request. Let's now create a way to log out of this account. So to log out, we're going to need our log out action. So we'll come over here, we'll say def log out, and we're going to call session.clear. We're going to redirect to the root path. We'll also create a notice that says logged out successfully. Let's come over to our home page. So that's going to be in our views, pages, home.html.erb. And in our home page, let's just create a quick container. Inside that container, let's do a .row.mt-5 to give it a margin at the top. And then let's do a h3, and we'll do session. We'll grab the data, and then we'll grab the email. And then we can close our h3. We can then come down below that, and we'll do a button2 logout path, takes us to the pages controller logout action. Class is going to be btn-danger. I actually don't know if this is necessary, so we'll just leave that off and we'll see what happens. And we'll close these quotes. Let's come over to our homepage, refresh, and let's spell session correctly. Actually, while we're in here, we can actually just check our session. You can see all the stuff it has inside of the session. So if we call session data, you should be able to see that it has this kind, an ID token, the email, when it expires, the local ID, etc. So if we refresh, I now have my email being displayed here, so you can see that I'm logged in. If I click log out, you can see that I'm now logged out. If we come back to the home page, you'll see that there's an undefined method for nil class. It's because we're logged out, so coming to this page is just going to blow everything up. So let's come over to our sign up page real quick. We're going to copy this whole block, and then we're going to come over to our pages index. And then in here, we're going to paste this whole block in. We're going to change sign up to log in. I'm going to full screen this. We're going to change the sign up path to be the login path. This can stay the same. You don't need this div right here. You want your link to change. It's going to be new user ? Create account, which is going to take you to the sign up path. And the rest of this should be the same. We'll save that. We can now come over to our pages controller and do the login action. For our login action, we're once again going to need this URI. And because we're copying this, that's probably a good indicator that we should put it in a more reasonable location. But again, for the sake of this tutorial, it's fine. You can see here it's then suggesting a response of a post form that takes in a URI with an email and a password. We are already setting those in our before action because we're good noodles that learn from our mistakes. We can then do a data, which is going to be a json.parse for the response.body. You can then do a if response.is_a ? net : http success. So if it was a successful response, we'll do whatever's in here. We'll say the session user data. Actually, we can just get rid of this last block here. So this is basically what you want to do. Your session user data is going to be data local ID, just like in the registration. So once again, we're copying stuff, so we should probably, consolidate it. And then our session data is just going to be data. If this doesn't work, we're not going to redirect. We're just going to, blow up ungracefully, whatever. So let's come over to our login page, and we'll just say dean@example.com with a password of password. We'll enter this down just in case there's any errors. We'll click sign up. Okay, I realize what my mistake is now. In all of the copy pasta that we did, which is why you don't copy pasta your code, we need to change the path we're going to be sign in with password instead of sign up. So by changing that, it should now change the endpoint of where this login request. Let's actually come back to our pages index, and let's change this button to say login. So if we change that and we do dean@example.com with a password of password, it'll now be trying to log us in instead of sign us up. So we can click log out. It takes us back to this page and we can log in again. One thing I'd like to add now is if we come into our pages controller again, we can do a couple things at the top here. We have our set user data. Let's do another before action. We'll say authenticate user, accept %I, and we want to do this for sign up, login, and index. We can then do a before action that says, actually, we're not going to do that yet because that's the next step. Let's go do this authenticate user. Down here in the private, say def authenticate user, and then we'll do a redirect to root path with a notice that says you must be logged in to view this page. And then we'll say, unless we are the current _ user. If we come into our application controller, so if we come into our application controller, we can do a helper method, call it current _ user. Then we can do def current user, and we'll say at current user or equals session user ID. So by setting this user ID in our pages controller over here, you can see we set it right here. That allows us to do a before action where I changed this because of a bug I was running into, which was a caching issue. It'll allow us to redirect to the root path unless we're logged in, similar to how we did it with devise. So now if I come over here and I try to go to the home page, it'll now redirect me here. I can still go to, let's say, the sign up page, and that'll work just fine because we're allowing this to work unless we're on the sign up, login, or index action, because it doesn't make sense for any of those since our index is our root and our root is our login, but our login also calls the login action. So now we have the basic authentication set up. Let's take a look at how we can create the to-dos. So for this, if we come over to our Firebase console again, and we full screen this, we want to come over to the Firestore database. Now you have two options, real-time or Firestore. Most of the time, Firestore is going to be the right choice for you because it's going to be more affordable. I'm going to start mine in test mode, and I'm going to hit next. It's going to ask me for a location. I'm just going to click on any location, obviously change it to whatever you need, and then we'll go ahead and we'll provision a Firestore. Next, we're going to create a collection. We'll call it to-dos. We'll spell it correctly, and then it'll ask us to set up a to-do. We'll just click auto ID, and then we'll click save. So we now have our to-dos collection. Okay, let's try this again. I don't think Firebase is doing too hot right now. Let's click save. There we go. Now we have a to-dos. So if we come in here, we can now create whatever fields we want whenever we want them. So I'll say this is going to be a title of type string, and it will just say hello world. Click add, and now we have our first to-do. So what we can do now is we can set up a Google Cloud Gem, which will allow us to connect to this account. So for this, we need to come over to our, what is it? We need to come over to console.cloud.google-cloud. Once you're over here, we're going to want to come over to your service accounts tab. I've sort of cleared out some of the stuff because I don't really know what's safe to show or not. And then we can click create service account. Once we're in here, we can name the service account, call it, I don't know, Firebase tutorial. It'll have a service account ID, and then we can give it a description. We can click create and continue. It'll ask for a role. You can give it a role. You can give it any role you want to, editor, owner, viewer, whatever. And then you can click continue. Once you're done, you can add other users. We're not going to do that. Once that's done, you can come over to the key you just made, come over to actions, and then click manage keys. This takes you to this page. You click add key, create a new key. You're going to click JSON, and then you're going to click create. It's going to ask you to download it, and it's going to put it into a file. I'm going to get rid of this file name, and I'm going to change this to keyfile.json. I'm going to click save. It's going to put it into my downloads folder. Now that's probably one of the harder parts of figuring out how to do this, but once you have that set up, you can come over to your application, and in the root of your application, you can put your key file. Now the key file is going to have some information in it, just sort of make sure it's secure. And then once that's set, you want to add this to your git ignore. You don't want your key file to get pushed up to your GitHub repo. And you want to add the path to this to your environment. So we're going to stop the server. We're going to type pwd to just grab this. We're going to remember that this is called keyfile.json, and then we're going to up arrow to our editor command. We'll open this in code again. Then we'll come in here, and then we'll say the key file is going to be this location dot slash keyfile.json. We can then save this and close it. It'll then tell us that it was saved. Now let's come over to our gem file, and I'll close the key file. And we can come down to the bottom, and we want to add in, and down here we want to add in a gem for the Google-Cloud-Firestore. You also want to add in other gems if stuff isn't working, like your HTTP client or whatever. So now we have the Google-Cloud-Firestore. We have the Google-Cloud-Firestore. Let's go ahead and run a bundle install command. And we can run a Rails S command again to start the server. Over here, refresh, and we'll just go ahead and we'll log in for now. And we'll come over to our homepage. I'm going to close all these windows. And I'm going to open up the home.html.erb page. Inside of this, I would now like to display a list of to-dos. So for this, I'm going to create a container. I'm going to do a row. I'm going to do a @todos.each do to do. And then in here, I'm going to do a .col-8 .offset-2. I'm going to do a h3. This will be our to-do.title. And then we'll say close the h3. We can then come below this. We'll do an h6. Then we'll do a to-do.author unless to-do.author.nil ? And then we'll close this h6. Save that, refresh, and now we'll start to get our errors. The first error we're running into here is going to be handled in our pages controller in our home actions. Let's come over to our controllers and our pages controller. Inside of our home action, we need to create @todos. For this, we'll say @todos equals @todos service.all. Now we're going to be doing something a little bit hacky again because we don't have access to active record. We need to create a small service object. You could, of course, just put this in your models. I want to separate this out so it's easier for you to see what we've done here. So we're just going to come into our config application.html.erb. And then here we're going to say config.autoloadPaths plus equals. Let me full screen this. And then we're going to say %w. And then in here, we're going to do config root. Instead of /lib, it's going to be /app/services. That gives us access to a folder in here that we can call services. And inside of services, we can create a new file that we'll call, I'm just going to call it todos.rb. So our todos.rb is going to start off by requiring Google/Cloud/Firestore. And then we're just going to do a class for todos. Now in here, we'll do a attr accessor, say this is for all, and then we're going to do a def initialize. Inside of our def initialize, we're going to do a @firestore, which is going to be equal to Google:/Cloud:/Firestore.new. It's going to have a project ID. It's a little alarming that it's just auto suggesting a project ID here, but we need to actually grab one that we are the owners of. So if we come over to our Firebase and our Firestore, we should have a project ID. I think it's actually just this one right here. But if we come over to our settings, project settings, and grab the project ID from right here, we can then come over to our code, and our project ID can be this. And then we can do a comma, and then we'll do a Keyfile is going to be rails.application.credentials.keyfile. So that should be the setup we need to actually set up our Firestore, and then we can do a get to-dos. So down here, we'll do def get to-dos, and then we can do self.all is going to be equal to an empty array. We'll do to-dos underscore ref is equal to @Firestore, and this is where we actually start to access our Firebase database. So you can call .col for collection. You can pass in a name of the collection. Now remember, we called this collection, if I come over here, we called this collection the Firestore to-dos collection. So I'm just passing in the word to-dos. You can also, if you want to, order these by saying .order, created at DESC. But remember, if you capitalize or you don't capitalize the to-do, it's going to order it differently. Because it's not really set up for querying. You're going to want to set up something in the middle, like Elasticsearch or something, to search through your results. But then we can do a to-dos underscore ref dot get, and then for each get, we want to do a to-do. And then we can just say all, and we'll just push in a to-do dot new with a to-do underscore ref dot data. We now have this to-do being created, but we have to actually make this to-do. Now, in general, when you have a to-do like this, you'd expect to see it in your models, but you would have like a, let me do this, to-do.rb class of to-do, which extends your active record end, and then in here you can do all your normal model stuff. In this case, we don't actually have active record. So what that means is we have to sort of create everything ourselves. So we have to do a attr accessor if we want to grab the title or if we want to grab the author. We then have to do our initialize, where we have like a to-do that might be empty, it might not. And then we can do, once again, just like over here, this same setup for our Firestore. But then we want to do like self.title equals to-do title, and then we have to check it unless it's nil, unless to-do.nil. And then we can do the same thing for the author. We just grab these, and that allows us to initialize it. But now if we want to actually create one, we also have to create a save method where we do @firestore.collection to-dos. We need to call add. And then in here, we can add in all the stuff that we want to save to our database. And remember, because it's NoSQL, we can pretty much put whatever we want in here. But we can't really do our references like we normally do. So then we have to do something like pass in the current user and grab the current user's email or their ID or something, and then work based on that. But once you do this, you can then set the title to be equal to underscore title, or let's say underscore title. Then of course we need to pass in these params. We need to say pass in a title, pass in a current user, and then we can do self.author equals current underscore user data email, right? And then once we have all of that, we can come into our to-dos, save this as well, come over to our application, refresh. You can see undefined method all for nil class. Okay, now we have to come over to our pages controller, and at the top here, we need to do another before action. So we'll say before action, we want to get the to-dos service, but only for the home and create to-do action. So to-do service, if we scroll down here, is going to look like this. We're going to do a def get to-do service. And we want to do at to-dos service is equal to to-dos.new. So this is our service object, which then allows us to create our models, which live inside of our models. You could also put this inside of your services. It doesn't matter. I guess I've changed my mind and I put it in models for this tutorial, but you sort of see how this works. So now that we have all that set up, if we come over here and we refresh, you can see that we have a pages controller to-dos that is uninitialized. It probably means we have to restart our server because we changed our configuration. So if we restart, we should now be good. But we're not seeing any to-dos here. Why is that? Oh, because we want this to be the title and descending. So that should fix that. And now we can come into our to-do and this can be correctly typed. And then we can refresh. And now we're getting our to-dos back. So the basic idea is after we fixed everything, we come into our pages controller. When we come into our index, we call to-do service.all. To-do service is just us creating a new to-dos service object. And then this .all is just what we're calling the array that we're storing all of our to-dos in. So in here, it creates the Firestore project for us that we then access with a project ID that we should be storing in our credentials file. And then it uses a key file that we created to access that project. And then calls get to-dos. Get to-dos sets up an empty array. It accesses our to-dos collection with the .call. And then it orders them by title and DESC. If I get rid of this debug statement here, then we do our to-dos ref.get where we do each to-do ref. And then we do a push of a new to-do with the data that we get back. Our to-do.rb here has the initialize, and then it sets the author and the title. Now this right here should actually be underscore title. The current user is still fine though. So now what we want to do is we want to create a to-do. So if we come back to our home page and we go above this container here, we do one last container, give it a row. And then in here we can do a form with URL, which is going to be /create to-do. And then before I forget, we want to come into our routes.rb file and we want to uncomment out the create to do. So this is just our create to do path, which routes to this index action or to this create to do action. Now we can do a comma after this. We'll do a method, which is going to be post. And then we can do f because we're creating a form. And then we can do a form control. We'll put this inside of it equals, and this can be f.text field for the title with a placeholder that says to do title ... Style is going to be width of 100%. And then below this, we'll do another form control. Oops. And then we'll do f.submit, create to do, class of btn-primary. And then we can come below this div and then do an end for our form. Save all that, come over here and refresh. We now have our to-do form. So we'll say another to-do. Click create. It looks like it worked. If we refresh, we're not getting our last to-do. So if we come in here and we refresh, we're not getting our last to-do. Why is that? Well, if we come in here, we don't have a create action. So let's create a create action real quick. This is actually one of the easier parts because we already set up a lot of the background noise for this. We'll just do a to-do.new, and then we'll call .save on it. We'll pass in the params title, and then we'll do a comma current user, because we're passing in the current user. And we'll just say do this if params title dot present. And we're also already checking for authenticated users before we get here, so we don't have to worry about that. We can then do a redirect to the home path with a notice that says to do created successfully. We can also come into our, our views, layouts, create a new file, call this _alerts.html.erb. Once we're in our alerts, we can do something like, let's just say if notice, and then we'll do a p tag for this alert, where we do a class equal to alert, or a class equal to notice, and we just put in our notice. Close our p tag. We can then also do a else if alert, and then we can copy this, paste it down here, do our end, and then we change this notice to an alert and this one to an alert as well. We can then come into our application.html.erb. Let's create a header, close the header, and in here we can render layouts/alerts. Save that, refresh. Hopefully it's okay. It's telling us we logged in successfully. Let's create another to-do. Click create to-do. Okay, we actually want to change this and just pass in our session, not our current user. So if we do that and then we say create another to-do, you can now see that we created another to-do that has our username attached to it. It says to-do created successfully. If we come over to our Firebase store, we now see our second to-do that also has our author attached to it. I think that's about it for what I wanted to cover in this demo. Of course, there's other CRUD actions that could be done here and some other Firebase stuff, but I just wanted to get a very basic setup done so you could see a couple different ways of how to access this data and sort of set up your own system if you want to. If you want to see more Firebase tutorials, let me know in the comments down below. I can go more in depth and set up something a bit more proper. I could even do like a React Firebase tutorial if that's something you guys are interested in, where we set up something a bit more involved. Just let me know in the comments down below what you'd like to see in future videos, but for now, that's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.